So, Samantha Stark, director of Framing Britney Spears. The first thing that I wanted to ask you was, what did you set out to do with this?
We started doing this, researching for it, I guess, early last year, and the purpose of it was to look back at the media coverage of Britney, especially around like 2007, 2008, through 2020 at that time lens, post Me Too, when we're able to talk about mental health more, all these things. And when you look at the coverage, it's so shocking.
Really, my jaw dropped with some of the late night monologue moments or interview moments. It's just wild to look at it through the lens of how we live and speak about women now.
Right, exactly. So that's what we had set out to do when we were originally researching. And I also thought, there's these photographs, these still frames that people always think of when they think of Britney Spears. People don't know her. So, for example, a photo of her shaving her head or a photo of her hitting a paparazzo's car with an umbrella. Those single frames have lasted for so long. And I really wanted to know what was outside the frame, because there's been so much unfair coverage of Britney and so many assumptions about her. So that was originally what we were going for, which is still definitely a big part of the film, is what is outside of this frame.
And called Framing Britney Spears.
Yeah, and how much has this one frame affected her life? People are still associating her with those frames. And as we were filming, the Free Britney movement was already going, but they were operating on this assumption that Britney wanted them to do it, or that Britney wanted something to change in her conservatorship. Because as far as we know publicly, for almost the past 12 years, she hasn't signaled through the court that she wanted anything to change that we know of. And so the fans were kind of operating on this gut instinct, this doesn't seem right, something's wrong. I think Britney doesn't want to be in the situation she's in. And while we were filming with them, all these court documents started dropping, and all these court filings where, yes, Britney does indicate that she wants something to change, and Britney does indicate that she wants her father's role to change. And so it was this vindication for the fans, and then we dove right in.
Having spoken to all the people that you talked to, do you think that Britney is signaling for help in her social media? What's your thought on it?
That is the question. I mean, since Britney has such a tight circle around her, in part because of the conservatorship, or it's allowed to be that way because of the conservatorship, journalists haven't really been able to interview her freely. We as the New York Times haven't interviewed her because we want to be able to do it freely with no one trying to adjust what she says or anything. And it just feels like you can't ask Britney. And so a lot of people look at her Instagram, myself included, and just wonder what this is. This appears to be the only thing the only place where she's speaking. But we don't know if she's controlling her Instagram also.
So you do say in the documentary, you list the people you reached out to who all declined to be interviewed, among them Jamie Spears, her father, her mother, people from his legal team. What kind of responses of no did you get?
We got a lot of people. We got a lot of people who didn't respond. I think that's, I think it is kind of standard that when you're in a legal proceeding, you don't talk to the media, but I think it's more than that. They haven't talked about it in so long.
Right.
We a lot of times we tried everybody multiple ways. So we did get a couple people yell at us and hang up.
As you do.
But we also talked to a lot of lawyers and had the response from them.
And what about Britney? You guys say that you reached out to her and you weren't even sure if she got your requests. What methods did you try to use there?
It's really hard to know, since, most of the time as the New York Times, if I want to interview somebody who's famous, I would call up their publicist and say, can you send this request to this person? And a lot of times the person will review it and give it back to the publicist, but we're unclear whether that happened. And so, we went through those usual places, and then we also went through people who know her or know people who know her that to get requests in. So we asked in several different ways, but it is still unclear if she definitely got them.
How do you feel about the representation on both sides? Like, I don't know how you get the Jamie Spears side when no one would give you an interview, but do you wish that you'd had more from them and from the family in there?
Well, I mean, to be clear, we asked them several times, like over the course, we gave them every opportunity to respond, over the course of many months, and they declined. So we, a lot of times we pulled their responses from, at one point we have a Washington Post article and we had to pull the response from there, or a Page 6 article. And so we tried to put in, and we have a lot of media commentary. You'll like hear this news voices kind of throughout the whole piece, as style, because that's what the whole thing, it like hinges on news coverage in a lot of ways. But so we do get, I went into the courtroom when we were allowed to go into the courtroom toward the end, and I heard all the arguments from Jamie's lawyers, and we tried to represent the arguments there. And so I don't think there's actually, to my knowledge, that many arguments that they presented that are not represented in the piece.
It's really interesting too to see, because sometimes I'll go on YouTube and look up old interviews with her, but to see it all compiled in this documentary, you really start to remember Britney was doing interviews and presenting a different personality years ago. And what did you think as you were kind of going through some of this old footage and seeing that Britney that we grew up with?
Yeah, I was struck by how in control she was, how much power she seemed to have over what she was doing, what she was saying. And that also came from a lot of the interviews that I did with these people who were with her toward the beginning of her career. Everybody, individually, separately, all said, the biggest misconception of Britney is that she was a puppet that wasn't in control of what she was doing. Even as a teenager, she knew exactly what her music was going to sound like, what her outfits were going to be, how she wanted to perform. I know at her first tour, she performed in overalls with bare feet because that's what she wanted to do. And so seeing how much control she had then, and seeing how she's like, there's a court-sanctioned conservatorship in which she has, is telling, can't control a lot of the key decisions in her life, is surprising, that contradiction to watch.
I didn't then, nor do I now, understand what a conservatorship is, especially for somebody Britney's age and somebody capable of so much that I know firsthand she's capable of.
It was fascinating to watch you talk to her former assistant, Felicia. I'd never seen her do interviews anywhere before. How did you get her to sit down with you, and what did you just kind of think of everything she had to say?
It took a long time to connect with Fee and get her to agree. I actually think, going through all the footage and all the media coverage of her, there's so much media coverage of Britney that's done by men. And it was actually hard to find women to interview at first. So at Jive Records, we were, the usual suspects are men that are interviewed about the beginning of her career. So we wanted to find a woman, and we found Kim Kyman, who was her marketing executive, who we actually, through talking to her, realized like, wow, this woman was so involved with creating Britney's image at the beginning, and so we came and interviewed her. We have a all-female crew on almost all of our shoots, and our directors and producers are all female. And I think Kim was struck by that, and so she reached out to Felicia and like kind of vouched for us, and that's why Felicia ended up talking to us.
I don't know if you asked her, but did she have any speculation on, just where Britney is at mentally and emotionally now?
Felicia maintained throughout that, what we see on Instagram is, Britney loves to dance and she loves to play around, and she, Felicia worked for her. Britney, within 2 months of the conservatorship happening, was guest starring on TV on How I Met Your Mother. And like within the year was practicing for her next tour. She had a tour, she had an album, and Felicia came back to work on it, and she was just really talking about how she felt like Britney could have made like a lot of the decisions that were happening there. That was her opinion. You'll see in the documentary.
Did you feel like Felicia was some kind of a representative to kind of try and get Britney's voice out a little bit, since she's not involved in the legality of it all, since she could speak? I
do. I think Felicia is one of the people who, well, from what I've heard from many people I've talked to, Felicia is one of the people who has spent the most time with Britney, who knows Britney the best. She feels, I remember Felicia said to me, there's just everybody's trying to know what's in Britney's heart, and there are just a handful of us who know what's in her heart. And people keep searching for that. And I think it was definitely a breakthrough in the emotional story, because it was very challenging to not have people who talk about her and make assumptions, because it's so many people just want to say their whole think piece on Britney, and like they don't know, but Felicia actually knows her. And she says in the piece, I wanted to remind people of why they fell in love with Britney in the first place.
Is there a reason that she doesn't speak out more, or didn't do interviews before? What do you think that is, if anything?
I think anyone close to Britney really feels the power of getting burned by the media.
There's a moment where, we're talking about the media coverage of this, the paparazzi, and you ask the paparazzo who was there for that umbrella moment. His car was smashed, and you asked him about his feelings on the whole thing. And he says, well, Britney never asked us to leave her alone.
Danny does say in the documentary, like, it was hard to understand what she was going through when we were in the moment. One of the reasons we wanted Danny to tell that story is that because he was videotaping, so we could see the video. So when you look at it, it's this epic moment in a still frame photograph, but it lasted like 2 seconds when you watch it on video. He tells the story that he had actually been following her around before that for a really long time, as she was attempting to see her kids and wasn't able to. And so, like, if you're a mother and you're not able to see your kids when you want to, and somebody is coming up to you asking you questions about it.
The full story behind the picture.
Yeah.
What do you think is the future of her conservatorship, having been to the hearings and done all the research that you've done? Where do you see it going?
I think a lot of people see a lot of symbolism in this idea that her father is controlling her, like symbolic of the patriarchy, but actually literally. These court hearings it's lasted a long time, and something that we bring up in the film is by looking at Britney's story, there's a lot of questions we have about the conservatorship system, and if there's like areas where it could possibly, there could be conflicts of interest. So for example, Britney is paying for her own lawyers, and she's also paying for her father's lawyers, and she pays for her conservators as well. And so some people could see opportunity for there to be a conflict of interest, because as long as the conservatorship keeps going, all those people keep getting paid. And also paying for lawyers to argue against each other is so unique. So my prediction is it's going to last a long time.
And for you, what barriers did you encounter while trying to make this movie, if any? Were there people trying to stop you from different sides of the legal battle?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So many people around Britney have NDAs, and they, would have to pay a lot of money if they said anything. People were scared. Jamie's team has sued some fans before, and there's a legal threat that way. We are the New York Times, so we weren't worried. Like, we wanted to go after everybody, but we've gotten some calls from some lawyers. Sure.